All right, I think everybody sounds pretty good. Johan, if you could up your microphone volume just a little bit, that would be perfect.
Sure. Let me figure out how to do that. Just 2 seconds. Or I can just talk really loud.
That
always.
actually is the easiest way to do it. I was going to say that, or if you wanted to move slightly closer to the whatever. It's,
yeah. I mean, it's always like if you can't figure out the real technical solution to something, just shout and be loud.
There's almost always an analog solution.
Yes.
Yeah, we're good then.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start up in about 8 minutes.
Nice. Anyone reading anything good right now?
Oh,
yeah. I was reading one.
What have you been reading?
It's like a David Cronenberg inspired short story collection.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool if you like his movies.
I have not been reading much of anything because I haven't had time. I did read. Actually, I was reading the. I was running my 14-year-old nephew through Troll King by Chris Bissett. Yeah, so I was reading that. If that counts, like
nice,
solid little sewer crawl.
That's really cool. I haven't been reading much like non-role-playing game stuff, but I did get the latest Mouse Ritter, which I've been reading. So,
really
good.
What a banger!
Yeah, totally.
Both the boxes are just like they've set the bar.
Yeah. Totally.
The punch outs and everything, and
so much in those boxes. I just love it.
Yeah.
We just want to do a box. So
we need more boxes. People need to spend more money so we can make more boxes.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be getting a copy of it, but it hasn't come in yet. I'm very excited.
You're in for a treat. Yeah.
You're still waiting on a contributor for the estate?
Yeah, I did one of the little adventures.
Yeah, it's great. Yours is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, the armor.
Thank you. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. Such a fun idea.
Thank you.
All right, another reason why. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just the trifold adventure format is so good. Mm-hmm. Just when I ran one of the ones that came with the pre-box set Mouse Ritter, and it is so easy to run that game. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
you got all the info right on one sheet of paper. It's perfect.
I do really love that.
Through it all. It's really good.
One of the things I'm thankful for, Sam, is you recording this so I can pop back and forth between my notes because I didn't print anything out.
Oh yeah, totally. No, this is fine. I'm rocking a second monitor, so we're all good.
Okay, good. Just gotta make sure my cat's okay. Here, my little office buddy.
I feel like my character here should also wear the skull mask that you two are rocking.
Oh man, yeah. I didn't even realize they were both wearing skulls. That's great.
Yeah, I feel bad because I'm kind of that's your thing.
We've the thing about it is we've all got them. They're under there.
That's
yeah, exactly.
It's a great equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
Do your own life.
I recently had a very weird experience of I had a like a CAT scan of my skull, at the dentist. Mm-hmm. It was the first time I'd ever seen my skull.
That's really cool.
Because when is that going to happen? It's purely a modern world experience.
Yeah.
Did you recognize yourself?
No.
Did you say that's me?
I honestly, by the teeth, by the bad teeth.
What if you get a 3D file and print it? Have a 3D printed copy of your skull next to you?
I would love that. That was I made a print. I made a print with it. But it's not. It's only digital right now. I haven't taken the time to actually print it out. But it's got that sort of 3D quality to it. And yeah, it would be nice to get like a 1-to-1, so I could sort of have a real heart to heart. Or
Yes, you could really. That's
Skull to
like
skull.
world's best memento mori. You could just stick it on like your desk, staring right back at you, and continually confront.
day.
Yeah.
just
Wow.
every year of my life, get a new bone printed out, and just like slowly be assembling.
Just
Yeah, like a
awesome.
loading bar or something.
Exactly. It's my
Yeah, I
health
like
draining in
Michael,
real
do
time.
a helmet with your own head.
Oh man.
I've seen that. That's great. Like printed on top of the helmet.
All right, so here's what we'll do is we will do a Merkborg supplement where you have to I don't know, kill people and take their skulls and make helmets out of it, and you get powers like Majora's Mask style or something.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds good.
I think you
Like-
should do a supplement where like the rules are all written out on actual human bones, and you have to ship people a box of bones.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we investigated that. It's a bit trouble with customs, you know.
It's you just
We got
you
rules.
just get a really good facsimile.
Yeah, they got rules for that sort of thing. So it's-
A buddy of mine found a jawbone, like a whole human jawbone when he was in Panama.
holy shit.
And yeah, it was
Whoa.
pretty wild. And yeah, you could not you gotta just leave it. You can't fuck with that.
Yeah, they hate it when you bring the bones other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Fen's got somebody who's
I
got
know
more
someone who.
than a giant skull. Go ahead.
I know someone who found a whole human head in Chicago.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
gnarly.
What, attached to
It was
the
pretty
person
gnarly.
or like, not?
No, just the head. You used to be able to order them on eBay.
Right. Okay.
It was illegal,
No
Wow.
doubt.
but you could do it.
Or like Return the Living Dead with the skeleton farm.
Yeah. Oh, that's
It was
in
like-
Illinois too, you know. That's like right nearby to me, the body farm.
Oh, yeah?
That's what I want done with me. Just
You want to go to the body farm?
no,
research,
like when I die, I'd like to be put in it.
Yeah.
Hey, Kaz, you're nice and quiet, but anybody up front, because of the position of the podiums, they're kind of drawn into the chat. I'm just going to have you mute.
It's like having all the really loud people in front.
Yeah, all the best people. Everybody in here is the best people.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that people are actually showing up. Like, this is great.
I'm glad we're really already onto skeletons, as far as topic wise, because I think bones are one of the best things to draw.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love, like, I forget, I was talking to somebody, because I had done a bunch of skeleton drawings for one of the OSE covers, and I was just like, you just got to make up the bones. Like, don't worry about the bones. Just make them up. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you just gotta feel them.
Yeah,
Yes.
just the feeling of the movement,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's always
like
like, if I don't know what to draw, it's always a skeleton. It's always like the first thing that comes to mind.
Absolutely.
we should maybe save some of this for the seminar.
I'm recording it all, so don't worry.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Perfect.
I think
All
I was
right.
having a conversation with somebody the other day about how knowing how to draw things makes you worse at drawing them, usually.
Yes. Yeah.
There's like a
Well,
bell
about that,
curve.
sometimes.
Like when you really know, it's like, okay, you really know. But like everything up between there and like there, it's just like, it's not as good as if you didn't know how to do it.
All right.
No.
We just hit that 2 p.m. mark. So I guess I'll kick this
Ooh.
off. Right? All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first Exalted Funeral Convention 2022. I'm David Hoskins, and I'm here with some of my favorite artists. And we're going to talk about art stuff, how we got started doing artwork for RPGs, how we're doing with it, our process. We also want to go over best practices and how to work with other people, what to look for, what not to look for. So we're going to break it down into sections. First, we'll do some introductions. Then we'll talk about, like I said, some of the process and some of our like tools that we use, that kind of stuff. This will be kind of a roundtable discussion. And then we'll open it up to you all. You can step up to the podium after I'm done and ask your questions, and we will do our best to answer you. And hopefully everybody will walk out of here having learned something, if not about art and art making, then about each other, because this is a lovely community and we're here to support it. So I guess I'll kick it off. My name is David Hoskins. I started doing artwork for RPGs probably in 2019. I have done stuff for Melsonia Arts Council, for Acid Death Fantasy. I've done some work for Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral with the OC covers. Is probably what people most know me for. What about the rest of you guys? We'll go down the line. We'll go with Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Lee Frank, and I've done a bunch of work with Jason Cordova of the Gauntlet. So I was their cover artist for a while of their magazine Codex. And lately I've been working on all of the illustrations for The Between, which is this like Victorian monster hunter thing. And also on my own, I've made a couple of games. I did You Got a Job on the Garbage Barge and illustrated it, and another one called Vampire Cruise. I worked on, I did a thing for the Mass Reader box set, and I did illustrations for a Scrap Princess project called New Futura. That's incredible, and you should totally buy it. And I think I've forgotten a bunch, but that's some of them.
I'm sure we'll get back to him. Johan?
Hi, my name is Johan Nord, part of something called Stockholm Cartel, and I make art and graphic design. Probably most known for being co-creator and artist of Mörkborg, and also later Cyborg, and now recently the remastered Into the Odd. But yeah, I do a bunch of stuff. I've been doing more and more freelancing, which I really enjoy. So, but mostly it's been Mörkborg that's been devouring my life. So yeah, but I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Mameli, also known as Skullboy, and I've been making tabletop game related artwork since about 2012. Back on Tumblr, I think the first project I did was Sword and Backpack. I made the rune for Sword and Backpack, and that was like what got me started in doing this as a sort of hobby, and then eventually led into a career. And I've been in all sorts of stuff, and I can never remember all of it, but Troika is one of them, and Old School Essentials is another one, and other stuff, and I do my own stuff too, and yeah.
All right. Real quick, I'm going to cycle back through, and we'll start with Sam again. So what was the catalyst that like you were just Sword and Backpack? You started with that. So did you do that, and then you're like, man, I think I just want to keep going, like what made you want to keep doing that? Because I know I was doing stuff for like a lot of hardcore bands and things like that, and I was doing some gallery artwork, and I sort of fell off of it. Like I kind of fell out of love with it, and then I discovered DCC, and I went to GaryCon, and I met Jarrett Crater and a couple other people, Jeffrey from Astonishing Swordsman, and I had his art book, a zine, and I was handing it out, and then they got back to me and said, hey, like make artwork for this stuff. And I started doing it, and I kind of fell in love with the community, and I fell in love with like gaming again. So how did that kick off with you?
Well, I went to art school and studied printmaking, mostly drawing and printmaking, and some other stuff too. But I mostly I've been playing games like tabletop games since college, and always just did character art and stuff, and I would do character art for the people that I was playing games with, and it was always just sort of part of the hobby for me, was like the art making behind it. And I started posting that on Tumblr sometime in the 2012-ish era when people still used Tumblr, and it was any...
Man, what a great time though, right?
Yeah, wow, those were the halcyon days, truly. And then that carried over to Google Plus, and I started playing games with people during that sort of everybody's just sort of getting together to play games time. And I met a bunch of cool people doing that, and then sort of slowly started doing art for them, and eventually it just sort of spiraled out from there. But I can't really. It's really hard for me to like put a real start date on it. It's always just sort of been the way that I interacted with the hobby, and then slowly but surely people started asking me if I wanted to do it for money, and then I got to a point where I had sat down with my wife and I was just like, I think I could do this like all the time, and she was just like, you should do that then, and I was like, okay, and then I did, and now we're here.
Cool. Johan, because you mainly, I know your work starting like as a graphic designer, right? And so you kind of moved into a more illustrator role with Merkborg, however you pronounce it.
That works. I mean,
I'm trying.
That's really good. I mean, I've heard way worse. But I've been so I've worked as a graphic designer like professionally for a while, but I've been doing art on the side as like a hobby, and also been playing like role-playing games as a hobby. And so I think I got my first. I had to look it up before this, but I got my first like freelance job in the RPG thing like 2005, and that was such a big deal for me because I could like finally have my art in an actual like book.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's like it was such. That was like I think the first start, and then I drew some more stuff for that company, but I didn't really find my own style until I believe we made Mameli, which was like 2019 or something, where I felt like I could really just go nuts on it and do whatever. Because it was like our own game and we were our own bosses for it. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was the question, but like that was I think the point for like my current like creative wave, if you want to call it.
And and we're gonna circle back to some of that in a little bit. Amanda, how about you? Like when did it really sink in or start where you were like, hey, I want to focus more on this? And like, what were you doing beforehand?
So I studied natural history illustration in school. So, and then I guess like that when this really like kind of started off is I lost the main job I was working on, and I was like, oh no, I need to pay the rent. Maybe I can convince people to let me draw pictures for them. So I started, instead of just like drawing on my own time and working a day job, I started like feverishly trying to produce a bunch of work and get a portfolio together. And then I kind of mildly bothered Jason Cordova at the Gauntlet until he gave me a job illustrating this cool, just like 2 drawings for this cool game about some dwarves that was going to go in Codex. And he just kept hiring me, and then I kept getting more work, and it just kind of went on from there. So I don't know if anyone is watching this from a like perspective of how do you actually do this? How do you become an artist? What I would say is to be polite and slightly more persistent than you might otherwise be. Like if you can stick it out long enough, I think anyone can do it. You just have to keep just try to manage to give yourself enough time to keep working at it. It's totally possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that kind of persistence is a big deal. Like you got to insert yourself into the community a bit, and just be nice is like like the number one thing. Like, just be cool and support other people, and the support will come your way. I want to get back, and I want to ask each of you about like your process and the tools you've been using. If you get an assignment, how do you go about sitting down and blocking it out? Are you big on process, or do you just sort of sit down and hammer it out, and whatever lands on the page ends up changing a lot? Or do you have it all figured out before you move in? I'll start with Amanda. I'll kind of do
so I would say that I try to do something slightly different for almost every project. Just it is a way to keep things fresh. Like I move back and forth between working digital and working analog for that reason, because I think if I do something like with pencil and paper or ink and paper, it'll be really messed up by the time it's done because I can't F7 or etc.
Right.
Can't Control Z anything. But often what I end up with is more interesting than the things that I get when I can like undo every single mark that I make. Um, so I hop back and forth between those things process wise, and that works really, really well for me. And I will try with every project to like look at it as this individual thing and say like, how can I make something that really reflects what this work is, and also how can I make this kind of a challenge for me so that I'm not like on autopilot, because I will
Mhm.
autopilot stuff if I'm drawing, and I don't ever want to do that. I want it to be like, can I actually do this good enough? Because that'll force me to actually like super focus on it. Um, so like the stuff that I'm to be really specific, the stuff that I'm doing for the between right now, I sort of made up a process for that specifically. It's this like
Oh, okay.
really like Victorian Monster Hunter game that Jason Cordova is writing. It's looking at where we started was looking at these old periodicals from the 1800s that had these etchings of incredibly violent scenes of murder and dismemberment and like small children fall into a river and drown, etc. And because they were like um, stuff for they were designed so that people would see them and go, they were like the tabloids of the day or whatever. So every single drawing is like, this is the most like unnerving terrible moment of whatever the story was, we have depicted it here, like and so so I went into this work trying to figure out how can I make this reflect the really like everything is over full of detail and everything is really like tiny little lines, tiny little people, like but also like as violent as humanly possible so that you can't look away because it's so gory. And so every single piece I decided to draw a decorative border, and the decorative border kind of reflects like what's going on in the rest of the story thematically. So if it's about like werewolves, the decorative border is kind of made out of moon phases or something like that. And I put as much detail as I can manage into that, and then I go into these little scenes within this page and fill those in with the most dramatic moments that you might occur as you're actually playing this adventure. um, and I'm doing those 100% digitally because that allows me to like work really fast and draw a whole ton of tiny little lines really quickly. But I'm also I don't know, like really like thinking about how much can I fit into this piece, and how much can I like zoom in extremely small to get even more little bits and pieces in there. And that one, I'm not really working that way for anything else I'm doing. Like
Okay.
typically I will be more like go to pen and ink and try to think about something that is like really big and it like hits you really hard from far away. So
Okay. Johan, you have anything to talk about there?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar there to what you were talking about, Amanda, because I want to be. I think it's important to always like challenge yourself in each piece
Mhm.
and avoid the autopilot as much as you can, because I find that if I do something that I know that I can handle, I get not like bored, but I will never end up in like the flow, that I need. So I think I try to approach every project with like as fresh of a start and like a fresh of a mind as I can. Like I want things to have a hint of my style, but also have its own like identity or its own like life. So
So you mentioned identity, which is something that I want to get to specifically with you because you've set up such a strong visual language with Merkborg.
yeah,
So like breaking out of that and changing gears between being a graphic designer, being in that mindset. I personally have a terrible time changing gears. Like I do a little bit of game writing and like just or switching between projects. even that, even if like just drawing between things, like it's like hitting the brakes, screeching, and it will take me a whole day just to get into that gear. And then I rely strictly on momentum. Like once I'm in it, I can't get out. Otherwise, I have to rev down and then get back into it. So how's that work with you when you're jumping back and forth between all these projects, like graphic design, art,
Not,
illustration?
not not very well when I'm jumping between them. I try
Okay.
to focus like entirely on one thing at a time if I can, because like yeah, I get into the mindset. Okay, now I'm working on Merc Body. It's this thing, and I want it to look a certain way, but I also want to change it up constantly because Merc
Mhm.
Body specifically has always been about experimentation and trying new things that we're not comfortable with. But say if I go into like working on Into the Odd, that's a whole different thing, and I don't want it to look anything like Merc Body because
Sure.
that wouldn't feel right. I think it's just like I do a lot of like mood boarding and a lot of like conceptual prep work before each project. Like I
Mhm.
try to find what's the thing with this, like the visual thing with this project. And I mean, obviously, it's gonna have a bit of my personal like flavor or like visual, I don't know what you call it, like style, but I want it to have its own thing. And like, I don't know. I think the ideal would be if people didn't see a thing that I did and say, "Oh, that's Johan's work." Like,
Mhm.
I want to sort of get step away a bit from the artwork and want it to have its own, you know, identity again.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that kind of comes from my like because this is just the thing that I do on the side. I have like my day job is as an art director, so I
Okay.
think maybe that sort of spills over when I think a lot of like concepts and you know, different visual worlds for different
Yeah, and
projects. Yeah,
that that's interesting too because of how like loose and like wild the artwork for Mercboard seems,
yeah,
where like, you know, because you come from a very ordered sort of background when it comes to graphic design and art direction. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into all that, and a lot of unseen thought, like a lot of thought, especially with graphic design. You're thinking about things that people aren't supposed to notice. You know, it's supposed to
yeah,
be like
exactly.
you read it and it's clear, it looks good on the page, but people aren't like, designers will do it, but a general audience just needs to not be thinking about this being difficult to look at, you know, when you're reading a book.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with like all art because you have a lot of like subconscious things with like composition and color and
Mhm.
you know movement, things that you might not think about when you look at it, but it just feels right and it just feels you know it hooks you for some reason. So
Yeah.
and I think I've written about that before. I think that's the most important part of when you do an art, like not the line work or the exact you know anatomical details. We were talking about skeletons earlier. You know,
Mhm.
it's just the feeling and the composition and the movement and the vibe of the whole thing. That's what matters, I think.
Absolutely.
So,
Sam, how's your process when you yeah, I mean, you can go, if you're working for yourself is obviously different from when you're working with a client. Uh, you know, how do you go about breaking it down and your process? Do you do a lot of thumbnails? Do you do a lot of like, do you work through it, or do you find you're often just direct on the page and go from there? Because I know you bounce back and forth between traditional and digital as well.
At this point, pretty much I'm just doing digital,
Mhm.
just because it's faster that way. I do a certain amount of traditional stuff just sort of for myself, just to I like to keep those muscles sort of exercised. And I realized recently that they're very out of shape. I started going to like a figure drawing not that long ago, and I was like, oh, I used to be good at this.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not good at this anymore.
it's
But
a big thing to keep sharp with that. I tried to draw a car the other day, and I was like, what is this?
yeah,
Like this, you know?
it's like you have to constantly be applying to RISD in your day-to-day life. It's just like, okay, this week I have to draw a bicycle. The For my process, I tend to it changes based on who I'm working for, definitely.
Mhm.
Like I have a sort of rule for myself that anytime I draw something for Troika, I'm not allowed to use layers. I just work on one layer in well, it was Photoshop, but now Clip Studio Paint. And I find that doing that, like all of Metagorgos, I did all of the drawings were, as many of them were on one big page as I could possibly do. And then I chopped it up after that, and they were all on just one layer. And that's sort of where that style came from, because I wanted it to feel analog, but I didn't have the time to do it analog. So I was trying to like sort of restrict myself in a way that worked within the time constraints and like my own constraints and stuff like that. When I do stuff for myself though, it's almost it's like a different style entirely, and I'm not super in control of it, I find. But there is like when I'm working specifically for myself, everything's way looser, way more cartoony. I have a lot more fun just like doing sketches, posting sketches, in progress stuff, and like when I'm working for a client, I try to be a little bit more strict and like rigorous with myself, and like I'll submit thumbnails and just like, okay, here are your 3 options, here's the good one and the 2 other ones, and you know, that sort of breakdown. But yeah, it just sort of always changes, and that's kind of fun, I think, too, because I try to think about art making as like sort of acquiring different styles of knowing how to do things. And so it's like, oh, I can sort of, and that's, I mean, a lot of times that's how I made it work, in that, you know, I have to be able to sort of do everything if it's gonna work. But I come from a background where that the art school that I went to is a lot of like sort of foundations based, like, you know, can you make a house out of, or make a shelter out of cardboard today and then watch us destroy it, and like that sort of like Bauhausy nonsense. But it's helpful.
It wasn't like draw the parrot, draw the pirate.
I like doing that too, honestly. I did a lot of that when I was a kid. And then, yeah, it's the more things you can learn how to do, the better everything else gets. It all works together.
Yeah. I think that's very good. Like if you want to evolve your style, to like try something that you're really bad at. Like, like try different methods and different styles.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Do any of you guys have anything you want to ask me? I know I've been sort of, this was supposed to be a round table. I've sort of been steering it. So if you guys can ask each other questions as well at this point. Like, I'm just here to keep the clock moving.
Gotcha.
Why don't you tell us about your process? Like because you have a very detailed style. Like you so before.
It's a big pain in the ass, is what. So that kind of kicked off when I started specifically doing stuff for RPGs. I don't know what the deal was. I think I was looking at a lot of like old etchings, like Albert, forgetting his name, Dürer. Yep. And I just really wanted to get in there. And then it got to the point where I was like, I'm going to try to do as little black as possible and just do it all with these tiny little lines. And since then, I've been working mainly digitally because I just don't have the space to work large enough to do that. Also, like I've got real bad elbows and hands and everything. Right. So being able to step back is a big deal, like auto, like Command Z or whatever. But I found that just working with the pencil tool, like just the little pixel square, and working that at like 7 to 15 pixels, and just trying not to zoom in too far, because if you zoom in too far, you'll render this thing and then you zoom out. It's like a big mess. I had a problem with that working with you, Johan, when you contacted me to do Dark Fort. I was working on that and I was like, oh, I really got to get in there. And like, so, and then I zoomed out, or I printed a test is what I did. And I was like, I had these little spider webs and stuff in there. And I was like, this is like just bleeding together. So I had to like make them a little wider.
So what you're saying is that you're actually doing pixel art.
Kind of. It's with that brush, because for some reason I find that like a lot of the basic Photoshop brushes, they kind of have that soft edge when you draw with them, and I hate it. And like for some reason, when you zoom out, it makes a more natural ink look when you're just using like the pencil tool, which is just a bunch of squares put together. And I don't know, that style just sort of like stuck with me, and I just kept going, and now I'm kind of doing what I do. But I do have to break out of that every now and again, which is why I did Black Knights, which is
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
very
Yeah,
like
Black Knights was super good.
Yeah,
thank you. It's very, I don't know, like I was talking to Ben from EF about it, and he pointed out, hey, this looks like old like Looney Tunes stuff, like when they started getting real weird, like real like Art Nouveau and real strange backgrounds, super angular. And we went back and found, like, as soon as he said that, I was like, yeah, I could see that. And I Googled it, and there's some Black Knights in there that look a lot like my Black Knights. It's like, they're black with white lines and red plumes. One
I
in
think
particular.
that's a very good example as well of like a particular project having its own style, but it's still from like you're
Mhm.
you're venturing into another realm in a way.
Yeah, and I've got a few other things in the pipeline that I'm working on that are not my usual like OSR kind of style. Is kind of what I'm kind of getting in that, like, not pigeonholed, but kind of pigeonholed, right? Like the guy who does like some OSR style art, and he does OSR projects,
Yeah.
which I love that stuff, but I would like to sort of move out of it a little bit. So I'm experimenting a lot more, and you kind of have to, otherwise everything starts to look similar, right?
Yeah, you gotta shake it up.
Yeah, I mean, just pick up something that you normally wouldn't draw with. Like, I mean, you use like a crown or whatever and just draw it. Like, just doing something like that, you'll figure things out about yourself, and you'll incorporate it back into your usual style, and then it will evolve over time. This is sort of the natural progression of things, I guess.
Yeah. Makes it a bit harder to make a portfolio if you want to constantly like change styles. So it's something I've been thinking about. But
Yeah, that's another thing, right? Is like, if we're talking about the business side of things, which we'll get to in a little bit, is like, do you want that? Do you want that? You know, do you want to be the guy or the gal or the person that does um like that thing and that thing only? I find myself, I get bored to death, which may be me shooting myself in my, in my foot, but it's hard for me to just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
I think this is why. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's been really great to do like some little projects that it's just me. Like I wrote it and then I did the pictures for it too, because it's this place where I can really be like, I'm my own art director, so I get to decide what kind of art goes in here, and it can be something that like no one is asking me to do this certain style. It'll be totally different from everything else, and I've had people like contact me for work and be like, oh, I like the way that you drew in this game,
Mhm.
which is the first time I'd ever done it. So you can kind of use it as a way to put new things out there.
Yeah.
You're not like as careful as well when you do your own stuff, because as we were saying in the beginning, like when you have clients, you want to really be careful not to like venture too far away from what they want from you, or like what you think they want from you. So
Yeah.
I think definitely, that's a good thing.
Another weird thing, like, just when I assume it was you, Johan, who originally contacted me for Dark Fort, but
Yeah.
when you contacted me, you had tagged a piece in my Instagram, and it was a really loose sketchbook piece. And I never post like sketchbook stuff or process stuff. I'm super
Really?
self-conscious about it. Yeah, and like, it was this page with all these like goblin guys on it, and you're like, we want something like this, and it's like, oh wow. So I mean, that's another, like, you never know what people are going
You
to
should
latch
always
on
post
to.
sketches. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you just, somebody could latch on to something that you think is just like a dumb little doodle, and
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's wild to think about. There are times when people get in touch with me, that same way of just like, I saw this thing you posted. I'm like, that's why I'm doing this. Okay, I mean, cool.
Like, that's enough. What do you mean?
it's
real quick, Sam.
Yeah.
You just mentioned, and we were all talking about posting stuff. You've got a lot. You're on a lot of different platforms. Like, you use Patreon, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Sorry,
and
it's all very funny to me because I hate social media so much, but I'm
Right.
pretty much everywhere at this point.
but that's what I wanted to talk to you about, though, is like, at what point can you give it up? Because I think we'd all love to. But,
This is honest to God, my quest right now is to funnel everyone into my Patreon and then delete all of their social media
sure.
and just accept the fact that if you want to see what I'm making, you have to pay me $5 a month. It's so stupid and it feels super crass, but it's like I gotta eat, man. Like I just and I think there's you have to compromise, I think, sometimes, specifically with social media, and just like find the way that you want to interact with it and start with the one thing and then build out from there. That stupid Patreon that I have has had so many different, I started it back in, I don't remember when. It was right before it was, if you started it before a certain point in time, you got more money in the split.
Okay.
And that's why I started it. I was like, well, I mean, even if I don't use it, I want to have the good rate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I started it, and I said I was the Better Legends poster club. And I was just doing one poster, like an 11x17 poster a month. And like I poured so much of myself into. I wrote a song and recorded myself playing the song as like the theme song for the poster club, and it was all digital stuff. I assumed that people would know how to like take a PDF to a Kinko's or a FedEx and just like print out their own poster, and this would be like an amazing deal. It's like, you know, $2 a month and you get all this stuff. It just didn't work. And so I just had to pivot, and I was just like, well, I'll just do sort of whatever. And so it's a lot of my time spent on social media has just been figure out what works. Like recently, like,
now you're just drawing saucy Pokemon, right?
Well, listen, there's a lot of different, like I said, you got to keep a lot of different burners on the stove going. So yeah, there's the $10 tier it's saucy stuff. There's no saucy Pokemon. We're not doing that.
Okay.
We're much more likely to talk about eating Pokemon in the stream. But that's I decided the only way to get myself to continually stream on Twitch was to start every day off with a warm-up drawing where I just drew the next Pokemon in the infinite list of Pokemon. And like that's kept me more or less like doing that. And like recently I'm trying to figure out how to like make reels work on Instagram. And sometimes that means just like not posting art and just like saying something into a camera just so that it works with the algorithm. There's a lot of, but it's like, it's dumb. All social media is dumb and it's bad, but you have to sort of play ball with it, and you can be a little bit lazy and you can be a little bit stupid with it, and you save your own mental state, and then, you know, people will find you.
But persistence is key with it.
You just have to keep doing it. It has to be every day. It has to be something that you've got a schedule for. Scheduling yourself is one of the most important things about this job, I think.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that.
Yeah.
So bad.
Like when it comes to social media, you have to remove your like you have to lower the threshold for what you consider good stuff. Like I find myself like when I'm in like a creative dip, I keep like just drawing whatever, and I have to post it. Like that's like a thing.
That's the rule.
Yeah, it's like okay, I have to spend like 15 minutes just drawing whatever, and then when the timer's up, I have to post it, and then you know those are the rules, and it kind of works, I think, but yeah.
Wow.
You guys ever hear that thing? Good enough is better than good.
Just did.
Yeah, I try to live my life by this principle at this point, because if I'm trying to make everything good, it's nothing happens. So like it has to be good enough, and then that lets the rodent in my brain get off the wheel, and it's just like, okay, there you go, it's done.
It's kind of like, done is better than perfect in a way.
Yes, exactly.
Get something done. Get it out there. Worry about it.
I'm the exact opposite. Like it has to be completely perfect, and like
then you post process.
Yeah, see, I can't. Man, I have a hard time with it. I'm just. What about you, Amanda? Like, do you find that it works well for you? Do you get work? Like, do you guys get a lot of work from social media? Yeah.
I wouldn't have any work at all if it wasn't for like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. They suck, but that's how you find people. What are you going to do? I've been trying to, there's a couple of like worker co-op style, like really idealistic, like there's a Patreon replacement, there's a Twitter replacement that's just getting started where like you know, who knows? But fingers crossed. Maybe once they actually get going, they will outlast the social media websites we have now, which all simply get like worse and worse and worse over time. So you could have a Patreon, and then you could also have something that's not on Patreon, but it's on this like super like socialist style, you know, everyone gets to vote if they decide to, you know, they're ideally they will not someday turn evil and take everyone's money away the way Patreon is threatens to do like once every couple of
Right.
months. And so I've been trying to like concentrate on that stuff because it's hopeful. And I, as bad as social media is, it's been really great to like see people's work. I mean, that's how I know everyone here basically is because of the internet. I wouldn't know all
Sure.
the people at all otherwise. So I can't really give it up altogether.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Speaking of, you know, how we all interact with each other on social media. I know, Amanda, you wanted to talk about like, what are some artists out there that you guys are really liking right now? I mean, obviously, I love you,
Um,
so you're here. I asked you to be here, so you're here.
yeah.
But like, is there anybody else working right now that you guys absolutely like, just can't get enough of? You love it?
I'm so bad at remembering names, but I know Alex Sorenson. Is that the name?
Mhm.
Really, like every time I see a picture from,
Is
it's so good.
that's
It's so good.
is that Into the Odd?
No,
Bastion
like
Land.
Bastion Land and like Stygian Library, that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Extreme like mind control and very good
Real
composition.
every like all the like it looks digitally inked, but it looks very like wet, you know, like all of his
Yeah,
lines,
yeah.
their
And it's
lines.
such a special like world, and I just look at it and I just want to copy everything, do the same
Totally.
thing. Yeah, I think that's what my current favorite, and also like who did like the illustrations for? Is it Heart, the role playing game?
Yeah, I don't know the artist,
Oh
but
yeah.
the covers are pretty slick.
Yeah,
In the
sorry, I'm
covers.
not remembering the name. Felix something maybe, or yeah, really good. And it's like kind of reminds me of like the Darkest Dungeon video
Mhm.
game style, you know, that like extreme high contrasty things. Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
What about
I,
you, Sam?
I made a little list. I'm really bad at anything being current or like that, but I made a list of the people that I'm looking at a lot right now because of various things that I'm making. First on the list is Richard Scarry.
Mhm.
Because I just did this big piece that's like a cross section, and so I had to look at a bunch of Richard Scarry stuff to like figure out how to draw a million little things. But it's super useful. Before I list off a few, it's super useful anytime you've got a piece that you're trying to make that you haven't done before, to literally sit for like an hour and look at one piece of art. Just force yourself to look at it the whole, and just like if you get bored, look at a different part of it, and like by the end of it I've found it's like, oh, I know how to do this now a little bit better. And it's just like it's that's my life hack for everyone. Kinu Nishimura is another one, is a Capcom artist.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I utilized her work for my version of, not my version. I printed out original Dungeons and Dragons, the Grey Harp one from Lulu, and I gave it this cover, which is like one of my favorite pieces by her. It's just like really silly, like sketch work for the Chronicles of Mystara video game. A couple others. I always like what Grey is doing for Break stuff. The game that when it comes out, it will end the world, and it'll be amazing. Always good. Nick Pyle draws metal really, really well, and just does like print work. Yeah, that's what I have on right now.
Cool. Amanda?
Yeah, I've been trying to get better at color. I feel like my drawing skills, I feel like, you know, comfortable with, but when it comes to painting, I'm like, I can make something work eventually, but I don't know what I'm doing in a huge way. So I've been looking at a bunch of like watercolor artists, because I feel like watercolor is like, that's like the hardest mode for getting colors down. Like you have to get it right the first time, or that's basically it. There's this artist, their name is Ryun, I think. I wrote down their, here it is. Yeah, the Twitter is Seong Ryul, so it's SEONG_RYUL, and they just do these like exquisite, perfect watercolors. They're almost like photorealistic somehow, but they are like pictures of like everyday life mostly, and the actual drawing is so tossed off, but the light and the color, when you look at it, it's something it'll make you mad a little bit to look at, I think, because it's so good. And you can tell that they just like, they put down that sky, and it was perfect the first time, because you can't go back into watercolor and fix it. They just had it right the moment the brush hit the paper. So that's the main thing I've been looking at. And of course, like if anyone's ever seen that Sargent painting of the alligators, John Singer Sargent did this watercolor of some alligators sitting in a swamp, and it's heartbreaking. It's just so perfect. I recommend looking at it. It's so good. That man always, like, usually he had to paint like a bunch of like rich ladies in dresses, and you let him go to town on some alligators and he just like kills it.
How about you, David?
Oh boy. Well, like I said, I love you three are excellent and always up there on the list. And I try to follow up with everything that you all been doing. Justine Jones, who also did some OSE covers and some Magic the Gathering artwork. I'm a big fan of her stuff, and she's super approachable and super nice. Lately, I've been a bit on the Japanese kick as well, with like Hitoshi Yanada is great. Akihiro Yamada, I think, also amazing. And then I've been working on a book that's going to come out at some point. It's been in development for a long time, and it's been sitting around longer because of my fault. But Swivers, Luke Gehring's book, I've been looking at a lot of like just medieval like paintings and like Harry Clarke's stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just trying to get real dark with it, but more grimy than like some of his Poe illustrations are just
they're pretty
they're
brutal.
just filthy good, man. They're so good.
Yeah.
They have a very prominent place in my Merkbari Pinterest board.
Oh, absolutely. And contemporary people like Robin Harris right now, I think, is killing it. They're on their Twitter or not their Twitter, but their like Instagram handle is Mystic Barbarianism. Robin plays in Wormwitch, and he co-did the Umbra magazine with Exalted Funeral, like when Exalted kind of first started, and that was one of my first projects too. I gave some pieces to Umbra, and that's how I met both Matt and Robin. But Robin's been absolutely killing it. Trying to think of, and Robin's stuff is very like Harry Clarke inspired at the moment. Really taking it over. I'd like to move this over to some talk about like working in the industry, some best practices, like the stuff that no one wants to talk about.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, like nobody wants to talk about rates, and like I'm not asking you guys for your rates, but like people always come to me and they're like, hey, I want a half page black and white. It doesn't have to be, it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be crazy. What's your rate? And it's like, and you all are laughing because we've had that message or that email before. But like, I find it really hard to have set rates. I don't do it. I want to be. I want to make my bread and butter. You know, so like I kind of do like I grew up with a lot of stories of like, you know, punk bands and stuff, you know, pay what you want. You know, Fugazi's on tour, you've got $4 for a ticket and it's like 7 to get in and no one cares. You just kind of pay what you can and you'll get into the show. Um, and I kind of have like I just have a sort of call it the Fugazi method where I, you know, I ask what your budget is and then I try to work within your budget. And if it's not completely insulting, or if they're nice, you know, if they're cool and they're nice and they're like, I have $50, David, please. And if I have the time, I will try my best to do it. Like, how do you guys tackle these when you get these messages? Because, you know, I'm hoping that some of the people that are listening to this are artists and they're listening to this to like to figure things out and to start to work their way into the business. Because that's another thing about doing art for RPGs is you've got those guys who have $50, and then you've got the folks who, you know, like Johan works with Free League. I've worked, you know, we've worked with Exalted Funeral and Games Omnivorous, and you know they're indie, but they're like probably the higher end of indie. So how do y'all handle that? I'll start like whoever, Amanda.
Yeah, I've got I have like this. I typed out my rates like a year ago into one email, and I just copy and paste it out of that email into every other email I get. And I should probably raise them a little bit. And then I always say, "But hey, I'm flexible. If the project sounds cool." And that's been working okay. Like I'm getting by. What I'm doing right now is I started a Patreon type thing it's on Camaraderie, and I'm doing like spot art collections where I'm basically just drawing some stuff I feel like drawing. And this is kind of in response to the thing about like ideally I would just the like city of Chicago or whatever would just give me a living wage per every month and I would just make art for free. I think this would be a splendid arrangement. But I can't because I have to like buy cat food and stuff. So hopefully if eventually like give it a couple more months and I'll have like, you know, a couple hundred like little spot art illustrations on my camaraderie page and someone can come by and pay $5 and they can get like a bunch of art from me and that will be the sort of, you know, pay what you can solution.
Sure.
Because I always do feel I both want to live and survive and make art 24 hours a day and I also don't want to be involved in capitalism. But that's what I'm doing right now and it's working all right.
Right. So what if I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry. whoever wants to jump in, Sam.
I've done a lot of different techniques throughout when I've been doing this, and where I'm at right now is I try to keep really good track of how long it takes me to do something, and I have an hourly rate. And so I just basically, when somebody hits me up and they say, I'm trying to do this, I just try to I do like to get an idea of people's budgets because I think that's a great beginning point for like any business-based artistic exchange. And then I know how long it takes me to do a character. I know how long it takes me to do 2 characters. I know how long it takes me to do a scene, a cover, you know, all this stuff. And I just rate it by that. And every, 6 months to a year, I look over my rates and I usually raise them a little bit. And that's how I've managed to grow what I'm doing right now. I mean, I feel, I've gotten to a point in my life specifically where I think of art as a luxury item. Because as much as we all need it, it's not, you can't eat it. You can't, I mean, I guess you could take shelter under it if you had enough paintings, but,
who are you without it though?
Exactly. But I think that there's a point where it's like I for a long time felt like, oh, I can't charge this much, like but it's like you have to take care of yourself, I think, if you're trying to make this like the thing that you're doing full time. And yeah, and I still will try and work with people with smaller budgets, because I think they're doing, if I think they're doing something cool, it's like I'm gonna try and make it work. But I think also some of the coolest things get made when people that have small budgets make their own stuff. And so like there's a little bit of that play of just like, you know, if you can't afford to like hire your favorite artist for something, fear not. You could make something that would actually be way cooler, just because of the nature of the hobby. And like that's, I think, the purest part of this hobby in some ways, is the people that come out of nowhere and they just wrote something and illustrated it, and it's all like working, and you haven't seen any of it before, and you're like, oh my god, like what is this? This is so cool. And like I feel like fostering that is there was a time in my life where it's like I felt like I was trying to do that, and now I'm looking at work just differently now. So it's
Sure.
but yeah, it's tough, because you have to, at least for me, it's like I had to detach the part of my brain that felt sick when I asked for money for artwork.
Some of the best advice I ever got was from Sean McCoy, and he said, whatever you charge the next guy 20% more until people say no, and then and then dial it back. Then just dial it back a little bit, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think there's such a like stigma amongst artists to raise your rates. Like, I don't know, because I felt the same way. Like, I want to be nice and I want to join like cool projects, and like, I don't worry about the money. Like, I don't.
Well,
I do
we
this.
get
I love it, but still, like
yeah.
afterwards, I spend all these hours, and I'm like, and I hear someone else like charge 10 times what I did for like a similar
Yeah.
thing, and I'm like, damn.
Well, we kind of get guilted for it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, exactly.
it's like, how many times have you given a number and people are like, oh, like I can't. That's just too. That's gonna sink my budget and my project.
You're
it's
killing
like, well,
me. Somebody
yeah,
said that
it's
to me
like,
once. Okay.
Because I'm not like Sam. Like I cannot, like something that I think is going to take me 10 hours will take me 2 hours, and some things that I think are going to take 30 minutes take me 2 weeks. And like I have to get it right. I don't, unfortunately, I can't, like I cannot turn it off and just like put something out there that's not like, that's not me. And I just can't, like if I can't hone in that hourly rate, like I'm not disciplined enough. like Sam, you got, if it's a gift that you can do that.
It honestly, it is an ever-changing target and arrow situation. Like,
Sure.
not too much praise. A lot of times it doesn't work out, and I spend twice as much time I meant to on a thing, and then I'm like, okay, we gotta remember this for next time. And it's like you're constantly just updating the information. You're sort of working as your own algorithm.
Okay, good. I mean, but I have a hard time even like looking at the clock when I sit down and then looking at the clock when I get up. But
I have a trick. And it's
it
you
a-
download you download OBS, and you don't have to stream, but you set it to record when you start, and then you have footage of how long you had everything open, how long you've got pen on page, like all of this stuff. You just have to go through and sort of look at
But that's
it.
a pretty big go. You have to go through it afterwards.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Yeah, it's not
I mean,
the best, but yeah.
Because I've been thinking the same thing. Like I should like time the stuff that I'm doing, but then I realized, okay, so when I'm drawing something, I flip between like that and YouTube and Twitter, and I'm like all over the place. So there's no like start and stopping point.
This is I've started thinking about that as part of process, though, at least for myself. Is like everything I flip through is just like I needed something somewhere else. I needed a glass of water. I needed to watch a video. It's all part of it.
How do you deal with how do you all deal with folks that are, there are some clients that are really particular and they'll ask for like certain changes and things like that. Do you guys like set up contracts where you've got hey, I've got thumbnails, rough line work. At that rough line work point, you have to let me know if this isn't going to work, and then after that, like I'm going, and like not, I'm doing it.
I think this is probably a very terrible advice, but I have never had a contract for my work. Basically, you should probably have it though. But I've never had like a problem. And if someone wants to do a lot of changes, then I will go in and say, no, hang on, no, I'm not doing that. Like,
Sure.
this is the thing that I want to do. But
Right.
I think maybe that's an American thing to have contracts.
I don't know. I'm a real handshaky guy myself.
Yeah.
Some of the
It's like,
bigger projects, they make me do it, but I don't know. What about you, Amanda?
Yeah, I've never had an official contract. At worst, I've had to be like, well, here's your final revision. And as a sort of, and then it kind of ends there. But it hasn't been a problem for me yet. So hopefully, this scene is so small. I think that as at least for me so far, it hasn't been a problem. Just because I think everyone knows each other, and if someone is like not reliable or like is bad to work with, you kind of find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I guess wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely like this. The scene holds itself accountable in some ways, and I know, like with Johan, you're a little unique because you're on both sides of things, right? Like you've both worked as freelance and you've hired as freelance. So, like, can you give us any information as to like somebody that you've talked to that you thought would be a good fit, and then after talking to them, they did something stupid, or you know what I mean? Like
no, not really. I mean,
as someone who hires folks,
my view has always been like the same from when I commission artwork to when I get like a tattoo or something. Like I put complete trust in the person that I'm hiring. And I can't remember when it was like when our interaction, but I rarely come with any changes at all because I completely trust the person that draws it. And so far, I've been having the same like experience when I'm being commissioned as well. Maybe that's luck, I don't know, or I just happen to make it right the first time. But there's rarely changes at all, and I don't know. I think like don't be a dick about it. Just be,
yeah.
It's I try to like avoid making it like a like I hire you situation. It's more like a collaboration, I think, and I try to get that sort of vibe in it. Like we're doing this together, you and me.
And that's something that if anybody is listening to this, and they're feeling their way around the business, like vet who you're going to work with, like find them on Twitter, see if they're posting a bunch of stuff that you don't want to deal with, but also like see how they interact with other folks, or try your best to sort of dig through it and figure out if it's going to be a good fit, because you might end up stuck with somebody that, now your work is associated with something that you either don't like, or you'll just see warning signs that might make this person a nightmare to work with. If you see their stuff, and they've used other artists, and that artist, like ask them about it. We should really support each other in that realm of things. It's a big help. A lot of people, I've been lucky that a lot of people that I've worked with have been very good and haven't taken advantage. I have had a couple instances where some people I felt overreached the way they've used my stuff, and used it for, not just the art in the book, but used it for a few other things. But that's a lesson learned on my part. But, I'm always very clear nowadays, if someone reaches out to me for something and I know it's going to be a decent sized project, a couple hundred copies or whatever, I just say, okay, you're paying me for print, you're paying me for PDF, you're paying me for advertising the product. If you do a collection, like if you end up doing, like, let's say this is the first zine, and you end up doing 3 volumes, and you want to do like a big collection, and you got to, if you want to use it again, like message me and we'll figure something out. Like, because you shouldn't, I feel you shouldn't take advantage. Like that's a bit taking advantage, like, of the artist.
Absolutely.
So I always try to like spell that out. If you're going to do like a collection, an omnibus, like reuse this for another edition of your game, like no, this is for whatever it is, volume 1, and that's what this is for.
You could actually ask, like, if you're an artist and someone commissions you, you should probably ask the person, like, what exactly will you use my art for? Because like anything outside of that is probably outside of the scope of this project. So
yeah.
So this
like
is. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's like they don't buy the complete full rights of your artwork. Like that belongs to you.
And work and like anytime work for hire comes up where like they just like own it, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Get out of there. Yeah.
Out of there.
This is a great application for contracts. Is what I found, especially when what I found is I do a lot of handshake deals also with people that like say I game with or I know to some degree or we've chatted or we go back a ways or something like that. There are people that I trust to do stuff like that. I mean, there are people where it's just like they just hit me up on Discord and they're like, "Yo, are you free for something right now? I've got like $200 and I need this." And it's like, yeah, totally. And it's like that's one sort of thing. And it's like, sometimes I'm working with like a board game company and they have a whole team and I'm being hired on as a contractor basically. And it's like, I want to know the nitty gritty on everything there, because not only is it, I want to make sure that I'm being fairly compensated for just like the time that I'm putting into it, but also it's like I want to know what they're doing with it, because I can sort of get an idea of like the kind of money they're going to be making off of that, the kind of money that they're working with as a company too. It's like there's no shame in asking for more money from a company that has more money. Like that's like one of those things where that's the beauty of the that industry, is that there's people buying the stuff, and that's cool.
And no NFTs.
No, NFTs are dumb. That's actually a really important thing. I noticed I was on Morkborg's website the other day and I saw the you can't make NFTs in Morkborg Arc, and I was like, hell yeah. But I'm
not sure exactly how we're going to enforce it, but you can't do it. Like,
but at least having it out there is just like, we think this sucks and don't do it, is like, it's. But there was one other thing I was going to say, and I might not be able to remember it now, but I think the long and the short of it is like, familiarize yourself with some basic contract stuff if you get a minute. That was a huge thing for me. At a certain point, I got my first job that they wanted to do a contract, and it was the most overwhelming thing in the world. Just go to, there's this very Googleable stuff where you just sit down and say like, okay, what do these terms mean? Like, what is buying the copyright of something mean? Like, which is where I learned to never sell the copyright of something that you made unless you're getting a lot of money for it, because it means you don't own it anymore. It is not yours.
That's actually pretty interesting, because that's not allowed in Sweden. Like, you can't do it.
Yeah,
so
it's a different. Yeah, this is interesting. There's a lot of different, I think, practices that are going to come into play just based on law here.
Yeah.
I also, for a hot second, I was working at a coffee shop in a law school, and I used to just talk to all of the law students about this kind of stuff. And so anytime you get the ear of somebody that knows about something like that, it's always worth it to ask. Because
Graphic Artists Guild has free stuff you can print out or just even look at as a resource.
Freelancers Guild as well.
Freelancers Guild, yep. And
big, like, at least here in Sweden, we have like pretty good like unions for artists and graphic designers.
Hi, could we all move to Sweden, please?
Yeah. What's it?
Or you should form a union.
It's
but similar. Yeah, exactly. Ask people who can help you know stuff.
I think at this point it might be a good idea to, if anybody here wants to ask us something, I'm going to step up to the stage where everybody else is, and you can either type or you can walk up to the podium and ask us anything you want to know, and we'll try our best to answer something. If that sounds good. Let me see if I can get out of here.
The diving helmet.
There you go. There. So we can just keep talking if no one wants to ask anything or whatever. That's fine. But it's open now. If anybody, here we go.
I have an icebreaker question if people
Sure.
are easing into the idea of asking something. What's the thing that you draw the most that you hate drawing the most?
Hands.
Hands. Oh,
Hands
yeah.
are so bad. Someday I could draw every like, here's the thing, like every 10 hands I draw, I get a really good one.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh man, I figured I've got it. And then like, no, they're terrible.
I feel this way about feet.
It's like a similar thing here. And like movement and momentum and pretty much anything that isn't just a static thing, a person making a pose or something that doesn't feel posed. It's really hard. So, but that's also the thing that I really want in the art. Like I don't want it to be static. I want it to move and be, full of rage, but it's very difficult. And I always hate it.
Yeah. Hands are always difficult. I find that I'm pretty good at them, but if it's ever a weird angle, because like I've got super bad arthritis, so like I can't do a lot of hand poses. So like sometimes it's real hard for me to like find it.
Do the thing.
Yeah, because I can't like look at myself a lot of the times. And I try not to use a lot of reference, mainly because I mentioned momentum before. Like even snapping out of it and like trying to find something for reference, like I'm too lazy, like or not lazy, but too frantically going. I don't want to stop. So
my biggest time sink, just reference searching. So it's just such a time trap for me because I get lost in that.
Looks like we have a question from JP Coover.
Yeah. All right, so can you talk a little bit about your approach to designing or illustrating for games specifically? Like, what do you do or think about beyond drawing what is being described in the text? For me personally, oh boy. I mean, you read the text, but then you also have to think about like, it's always good if you have the page already laid out, so you know how it's going to be placed on the page. I'm a big advocate now for getting the page blocked in, like at least most of the way with the designer. And that can be a little bit of a pain in the ass because some people don't want to have to like go back in and fix things. But I find if you want something to look really good, like just have it blocked out simply, so you know what your dimensions are and where it's going to be on the page, because that can totally dictate like the direction a character is looking, if there's movement or whatever, if you want it to go off the page or into the gutter. That kind of stuff I find is very important. It really helps me when I'm doing that. And also just researching the game in general, like what's it about? Like right now with Swivers, it's kind of this in between Victorian and Middle Ages kind of vibe. So like it's like I'm looking at a lot of stuff that's fancy, and then like I really dirty it up, like dumb it down. Like there's a lot of stuff that has a lot of patterns, so I'll keep the style of like, let's say a poofy shoulder or whatever on a dress, but won't do all the ornate stuff, or if I do, it will be like frayed out. And I don't know. That's what I got. Amanda?
I always think about like, I think that everyone has had this experience of like opening up a game book and you're just kind of at the skimming it stage, but you're mostly looking at the pictures, and you look at a picture of like a bunch of guys and they're getting ready to fight, and you're like, yeah, I want that to be me and my friends. And so I basically try to always keep that in mind as something that I'm trying to do to some extent, even if it's not as obvious as you might see in like a D&D, publication or whatever, but that it will be making whatever is in the text look as exciting as possible to someone who's thinking about playing it. And in a way that sounds like a little bit like an advertising thing, but it's not really. It's just that like the illustration is doing as much work as possible to make I don't know, to bring like the experience of playing the game to life rather than just being like a depiction of something that's in the game. I
Well, the
try to keep that in
potential,
mind.
like you're
Hmm.
showing the potential of like what your game could be, but not like really, because you don't want to tell people how to play, but at the same time, like your art, you're
Right.
chosen to do the art because like that's the creator wants you to do it, and so you want people to stop at your artwork during that first, do I want to play this game? Open the book.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a
Yeah.
D20 game. All right, whatever. Like, okay, I'm good with that, like, or it's powered by the apocalypse. People have already chosen that based upon, the system, unless it's in your system. But you want to be able to open a book and someone to stop on that image and then be like, oh, what's this for? Oh, that's the critical hit table. That's why that guy's eyeball is popping out. Johan?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think I want to build upon the point that you started with like drawing on a blocked out spread, because I think that's a really good way of making the whole reading experience better for like when you flip through the book, because like I try to avoid having the text and the art be two like separate entities that somehow should like fight each other for space on the page. Like I want them to meld together into one piece. So
Mhm.
that's my usual technique as well, to like lay out the basic like text and layout, and then just copy that into Photoshop and draw on top of the spread, like draw on top of the layout.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to work.
Sam?
I actually feel super similarly to Johan here. I think we have sort of possibly styles on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I think we have a very similar workflow, because I was talking to Amanda about this before this all started, of and this doesn't really apply to the freelance work that I'm doing so much, but a lot of the stuff that I'm making for myself and a lot of the stuff I've been making recently, I'm doing the art and the writing at the same time on the same page, and just writing it in like on the tablet, like with the same tool that I'm drawing with. And it's terrible if you ever want to give it to an editor, but it's perfect if you're just me, is how it feels. It's like I really like just doing everything, and I really like, I don't know, it's like I think about RPG design a little bit like that era of like comic books where like the writer and the artist weren't really talking to each other, or maybe they were in separate rooms or something like that, and like you have this weird script sense of like, and then behold, the mighty Thor was there with his hammer Mjolnir, and also there was a 50-foot giant made of iron in front of him, and they were standing in a field, and then also they draw that, and it's just like it feels like you're not trusting each other here. And like I feel like RPGs in general, and writers are going to hate me for saying this, need to be less text heavy in a lot of ways. And I mean, I figure, I mean, one of the things I love about Morkborg is that like, it feels like you have to traverse it to understand it, but that's good. I think you should have to like sit and like pore over the tome a little bit, and like there's something to be said for like, oh, but I want to run it quickly at the table, but it's like I don't think text is the way to do that, not for me at least, not when I'm running a game. I need graphics and infographics and coloring and bolding and like different text treatments.
I really recommend. Sorry, because like when I play a game, I can't read the book. Like, that's out of the question. No reading.
This is earlier today. I was listening to the panel that ZXU was on, and he was talking about working with the artist that he works with, Mooncow, and I've run some of those those 1,000 Islands games. I've read them, and the way that the text and the art do not repeat each other, but like add to each other, is like, oh, it's so perfect.
That is a dream team.
Yeah. I think the art should enhance, like not even illustrate the text, but it's just like add something else to it. So, like those two things become separate, like another thing.
Yeah, that's big one. Like don't always illustrate what's on the page, but try to complement it. Like if there's a certain theme or whatever, think about what else could be in that theme and incorporate it. I want to jump real quick. We have another question from Paige down below. What have you found to be the best way to get work in RPGs? Examples: waiting for an open call, emailing a designer company directly. I found for me personally, I going to cons was the best decision I ever made. Was going to GaryCon and just bringing a zine, an art book that I had made. I'd made a book called Summoning Sickness that was all just like, it was like a little folklore book that had a bunch of monster drawings and writings and stuff. And I just handed it around to people, and in person was the best for me personally. If we're not in those times right now though, so just emailing a company directly is always a good idea. If hanging out in Discord communities with people that you want to work with is a great idea. And definitely if there's open calls or game jams right now, like just doing it and getting it out there um, is the best way that I think to get into it. I got like I mentioned Umbra before, the first magazine that Exalted Funeral put out. I was following Exalted because I wanted Mystic Punk zines, and they were carrying them, so I got them and I started following them. And they did an open call for Umbra, and I thought it looked really cool, so I messaged him. I messaged Matt and just said, "Hey, I've got some stuff. I'd like to submit it." And he said, "Cool." And from there, we just started chatting, and like now, I'm in it, and I'm stuck here. So,
yeah, I think reaching out is
and being nice.
Yeah, be nice, reach out, have a place that people can see your work. It's good to have something. It's good to have at least one form of social media, I would say. And it's kind of nice to have a website. I mean, I know that sounds old, but I'm kind of old for the internet. And so like, I like having a website. I have, how people have like Linktree and stuff like that. I just have that as a page on my website. And so, everything that I do, you can find it on one page. And if I want to say, hey, would you like to hire me and I'll do work for whatever, like I just send them there, and it's just like, make it easy.
Yeah. I find that most people are super responsive, and at least in like this circle that we're in now, like with Exalted Funeral and Games Omnivorous and Plus One Exp and Stockholm Cartel, like we're all very nice, and we try to be nice and supportive. So reaching out to people is always a good idea. Real quick, does Amanda, do you?
I one thing I think that has been really good for me is having just like released a couple of my own games that I illustrated. And that's probably not like, not everyone is going to want to like write an adventure or whatever, but if you feel like it's something that you're interested in or you could do, and you also do the art for it, then that just like, that's great, because then your work is there and everyone can look at it and see, oh, this person, like, not only do they have a portfolio, they've like finished this thing, and I can go see it on itch or whatever. And I think that's been really helpful for me, that I have some stuff out there that's like,
Yeah. I skipped over one here specifically for Johan. And I guess, and if either of you ever plan on hiring other artists, but Behold, this is actually a good buddy of mine, Kent Bonifield, who is a talented artist. And he wants to know, Johan, when looking at artists to hire, what sort of fundamentals are you looking for, specifically gaming? And does it change with genres, or, as director, publisher, game designer, game artist? What are you looking for?
It changes from like game to game. Like I think every game has its sort of style and its vision. It's like artistic direction in a way. And I think if the artist, because like sometimes we look for new artists for projects, more so now than previously. But because I'm all like, we want to branch out and try different things and make different styles. But I think I, as like I guess art director in this case, would have an idea of what I want it to look like, and if that artist sort of either matches that idea or completely, subverts it and does something else that just, grips me for some reason or grabs me for some reason, that works. So I don't know if that's an answer, but it's either something that just aligns perfectly with what I had in mind, or something that just blows me away and do something else.
The big thing though is to just make stuff and get it out there, get it in front of people's eyes, and like, if you know, no matter what you do, I feel that there's a spot in this community for you, and like if you just put your stuff out there and you keep going, stick with it, like you will find a spot and you will find somebody who's willing to like work with you and make something awesome.
I think for the last question there, what I did when I first got into making like freelance art was I spent a lot of time on a forum for a specific role-playing game, and I made a bunch of stuff for that, like adventures and artworks and maps and whatever. And eventually the guys who made the game reached out, luckily enough, and asked if I wanted to do an official like map in this case. So I think like if you find a community that you like for a game that you like and you make stuff for that game, then who knows? Maybe, I mean, probably you'll get in contact with the guys making it, and maybe you'll work together someday.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I'd say
if you
that.
bother...
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that, and never forget the power of a simple call for commissions. If especially like a lot of the first work that I ended up doing in the scene at all was just drawing people's characters, or I was doing like I was calling them like commemorative character sheets. Like, if somebody like had like a character that they really loved that they had retired or they were still playing or something like that, just sort of it's like a freeze frame like on a person's character, and I just would do all the stats and everything. And it was, for me, it was a great way of sort of learning. I'd learned a lot of new systems doing it that way, because they'd be like, oh, this is a character for Exalted, and I'll be like, I don't know what that is, and then you go and you sort of learn something, and I don't know, that was really fun for me, at least when I was first getting into everything. And a lot of my first work that people saw was because of that, and it's easier to just talk between people, and I don't know.
Hey, Funeral Daddy just walked in here. Matt Kelly himself. Matt, come on up to the podium real quick. Yeah, you got to do it.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. All right, guys. So we were just talking about hiring, like, or how to approach, how best to approach and get into making artwork with certain, like a creator or a publisher. So I thought maybe you might be able to chime in on some of this. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
So if you're trying to get, and just from an approach standard, I would say just go for it. It's kind of like what we said last night, just put your foot forward. I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard or scary to put yourself out there, but I don't know, whenever I need something, I just go and ask. I mean, like Amanda can attest to that, Dave can attest to that. I'm just like, hey, I'm Matt with Exalted. Like, what? And so even if you're just an artist, like sometimes, we get artists that do solicitations all the time, and I think it's wonderful, and from a creator standpoint, just do it, because it's taking out a ton of legwork. Like on the publishing side, like we get, we have a ton of projects that we're doing. And so I always need something, there's always something in the pipeline that could use anything. And that's not just from published material. That could be design work on the site. That could be design work for, a pamphlet or, a leaflet or something. And there's always something. So it's always great to hear from any creator, and everybody's super slam, but just put the foot forward and do it. That's the biggest thing is, don't be afraid that, I've gotten people that are like, I feel like my work's too amateur, or my, and I'm like, I never feel that case, art is subjective. So,
right.
Approach you're your own worst critic always as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just make it happen, and again, there's always something that needs to be done.
And if I work customer service for Exalted Funeral, if you email me, or if you email like projects at Exalted Funeral, or I will always forward your info to Jarrett, so that you'll be there. And if something comes up, then I mean, Jarrett's reached out to people out because we've got like a little, we've got a stack of creators, and if or artists, and if the creator is like, I'm looking for a person, we've got your submission, and so we'll always like put you up there for people to find you, if they're working with us,
Absolutely. Well, and also if you just need help, that's there's, I know sometimes people can be kind of scared to ask, but if you have questions, if you feel like you're an artist and you're like, I don't understand about this licensing with this, and it's, even if you're not working with Exalted Funeral, Dave is super approachable. I'm super approachable. Most people are, and you can ask around. Just you just do it. Don't be scared to ask. Even if you're not working with us, you can get tons of great information just by reaching out. And if there's someone that we're adjacent with that you're trying to get contacts for, just reach out. That's the way it is. We want to help everybody get like the best experience. Artists can kind of sometimes be, how do I put this nicely? Like some of the most taken advantage of in this business, because, you never know. You work with different people, they give different rates. People are scared to charge what they think it's worth. And, don't ever feel that way. Like if you have questions about something or anything, reach out, and we're very candid about that stuff. It's,
I ask Matt every time. I'm always like, Matt, how about this? And he's like,
yeah, I'm like, charge the most. Like, what is the full rate? And he's like, I can get, I don't know. It's easily one of the things that's always, I feel, especially early on, people are taking advantage of. We had a project where one person was charging, a very large premium, and everybody else were charging like pennies, like pennies on this dollar. And I was like, we can't have that. So we got to pay everybody this rate. You want to make sure that you get what you're worth. And sometimes that's hard to understand, especially if you're starting out as an artist, or even sometimes professional artists even have difficulty navigating that, because money is always like a weird sticking point, and it shouldn't be. Every project has a different budget, but I don't know. If I want an artist to work on something, I pay that artist. I mean, that's the thing, so don't be afraid to ask questions, ask about your licensing too. That's another thing. A lot of times people get to own everything in perpetuity, and sometimes that's not always cool. So make sure, if you're an artist, get everything. And again, ask around, ask people, ask other, because maybe it's for this print, but people will make money on t-shirts, people will make money on postcards. I sell all sorts of tchotchkes. I'm like, let's put it on a keychain. But you got to pay for that, and that's the reality. Even if you're like an artist who's done two things, or you're a huge name with a huge following, everybody should be treated the same. So, but again, just ask anybody. There's fellow artists all over. Like, do not be afraid to ask questions, even if you feel like they're hard questions. Like, being upfront about it and talking to them, and don't be afraid to walk away either. Like, for your principles and your finances, like it's still your time.
That's a big one, because people that want to work with you and you want to work with, like you'll be able to figure something out. You know what I mean? Like, it's if it's a big like push and pull, and you're like, oh, I don't want you to make a t-shirt, and they're like, well, this is what we're paying you for. It's like, do you want to work? Yeah, do you really want to do that? It's like, you might get some exposure, but it's not going to be a project you're going to be super like.
I think also like if the person hiring you is like start to haggle with your price, that's a big red flag, honestly. Because like when I hire like commission artists, if they tell me their rates, like that's what we're going for. I will never try to like convince them to lower it for any reason. If I can't afford it for some reason, then I'll just say, okay, sorry, I'm going to another one. But no, honestly, you should be paid what you think you're worth.
And a lot of people always give that excuse, and a lot of publishers and other creators are like, oh, but the opportunity. But trust me, once you put in so much time, you're doing like 8 months of work for like 2 weeks of pay. You could have had so much other exposure by doing other things. So don't be afraid to walk away. It's, and if that person is a stand-up publisher or stand-up creator, they'll come back to you. There's sometimes, sometimes I do projects and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so over budget. But if I want it, I want it. And if I can't afford it, then that's it, and just be upfront and really know your worth.
Exposure is something you die from, people. It's not, it doesn't, like it's like Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
So don't do stuff for exposure unless it's something small and you just want to get it out there, and but if it's like a publisher that has a budget and they're paying you, don't be afraid to walk away. Or if anyone says it's good exposure, it's not worth it.
I think money is such a big problem as well to talk about, because everyone is so secretive about it. Everyone, like, no one wants to tell you their rates.
Yeah.
And it's like that classic meme with like the two cowboys about the duel, and like one says, what's your rate, and the other says, what's your budget? It's like,
Oh God.
Yeah, because like no one wants to reveal their cards, not even amongst artists.
It's very real.
Well, I mean, we're just about at the end here. Kaz, real quick, has one last question. And he said, Johan mentioned flipping between Twitter, Photoshop while working. What's your processes when creating? Do you listen to music? Do you like to work in silence? Do you do specific things to get into the mood for a specific type of work? What do you do? Let's start with Amanda.
There's this website called like mynoise.net, I think, which is just like little like various noise generators, like you're on a train or you're on a boat, etc. But there's like 300 of them or something. Anyway, I listen to that a lot.
Okay.
So you like just ambient that's my noise? Background. Yeah. I also like listen to some of world's most boring music, because it's got to be it can have like words, but it has to be slightly changing. So yeah, the world of horribly boring ambient music, I listen to so much of that stuff.
When you're working on crush depth, do they have like ambient summer noises, or like I know that there's like a for the Alien, the Nostromo, like ambient noises too.
Yeah.
Pretty cool work too.
Yeah, I'm all about that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. What about you, Johan?
So my process is I listen to a lot of music as well. Usually if there's like big projects, I make a playlist specifically for that project. But then I just listen to loud music. I flip a lot between my tabs. I have something good and strong to drink, and I just draw. I'm tired, basically. And I try not to change too much when I draw. Yeah, no, that's basically it. I try to switch tabs less, but it's just getting worse and worse. So,
Sam?
Well, it depends on what I'm doing. When I'm streaming, I'm usually listening to whatever is not going to get copyright struck. So I end up listening to a lot of like Animal Crossing music with rain sounds, which is just Brian Eno for millennials. But if I'm not streaming, I'll tend to listen to, well, depending on the, like, sometimes I'll just like, if I'm doing like the first stages of something, like really trying to like develop like an image or something like that, sometimes I'll just work in silence. And then sometimes if I'm like coloring or doing something kind of mindless, I'll watch like TV. If I'm doing something that requires a little bit more, where I like have to pay attention to sort of what I'm doing, but I need something in the background, I'll put on unsubbed, undubbed anime. And so I'm just listening to a language I don't understand, and there's sort of colors happening over there. And then I usually flip between like 3 or 4 pieces at the same time to avoid going to different tabs like on the internet or something like that. Because the way I've found my brain works is like I work secularly. So I start on one piece and then I'll get bored. So I'll move over to another piece and then I'll move over to another piece. And eventually I get back to what I was working on in the first place, which is what I'm supposed to be doing.
we just started downloading a bunch of Doraemon, and it's like we can't find subs for any of it, and there's
Perfect.
like 30 million seasons, and we've just been watching them. They're so much fun. Matt, what about you when you're thinking about hiring artists?
That's usually phone calls. And then I guess if it's like actual, like where I'm like, please pick up the email. Please, hey, I need your help. I mean, if I'm like actually looking for like an aesthetic for a project, I mean, I try to like use, I mean, any millions of different genres of music, but during the day, if I'm being quite frank, like I usually have some sort of music videos playing in the background on the TV. So, and I alternate from office in out whenever I need silence. So, but what about you?
So I find that when I'm drawing something nasty, I listen to like a lot of power pop and like old like jangle pop, like jangle rock, like Flying Nun Records stuff, like real poppy, like REM style shit. And then if I'm trying to draw something like not like that, I'll listen. It's like the opposite. So I'll put on like Earth or something like real drony and heavy. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but only during like after I've got it all laid out. Like I can't listen to something while I'm thinking like about complicated stuff. So like I'll start off with music, and then I normally will move into like a podcast or an audiobook. And from like when I'm doing fine details, like once the layout is already there and I don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting with my brain, I can move over to other things. But I definitely have to mix it up between music and podcasts. It helps. I don't know. It just kind of helps my mind. Like once I get bored, I start becoming numb to one, I'll move over to the other, and it just creates some kind of alternate stimulation for my brain. So
I think you want to conjure a certain feel. Like when I remember when I was doing art for Cyborg, when I was trying to make this like super dark and terrible capitalist hellscape, I listened to just a bunch of ads, just on repeat. A bunch of like company jingles and shit. So yeah,
that's good.
That's a very exact thing.
It's kind of hard to find those loops actually, but yeah, I managed to scramble something.
Well, yeah, that's very immersive, you know. Like I almost do the opposite, where I'm like I said, if I'm doing something nasty, I'm listening to something like kind of got me.
Yeah, that's great.
A little bit. Well, does anybody else have any last questions before we sign off? We're just a little bit over time, but I don't think anyone's going to kick us off. So I don't want to keep I know Johan's with family right now.
No, I'm with my in-laws, so it's fine.
Totally different.
All right. Well, nope. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to end it. Thank you all so much for being so generous with your time. And it was great just getting to sit and talk with you all. And I hope everyone had a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank
Learned
you all
a lot.
for
Good.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Not a problem. Well, everybody enjoy the con. A recording of this should be up probably tomorrow or something. And I know Matt, is it tonight with the movie premiere?
It is. Tonight's the movie.
So Hard Ticket to Hawaii looks great. Everybody, I hope everyone makes it for that. And take it easy. Have a good time. Stay safe. And please reach out to, I know you can always reach out to me if you have any questions for anything. I'll do my best to get back to you and help you out. Everyone else here, Matt, I know he's an open door policy. Just don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah. Ask the Morkborg account for anything.
Yeah. All right. All right, everybody. Well, thanks a lot, and we'll catch you later.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye, friends.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sam, for recording.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'm going to hit stop recording now.